This is Speaks Her Truth.
And I am Atlantis.
And we are your hosts for the Black Room, Dark Room, and Youth. Yeah, I know we were changing the name, did you? I didn't either. Just kidding. So welcome to episode 4, guys. So we are just a few short episodes away from wrapping up season 1, but we are super excited to be here with you guys. Atlantis, anything you want to share with the people before you drop some knowledge on code switching?
Let me think. I don't think I have anything. I think I'm ready to get into it.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to you, Atlantis.
All right, appreciate that. Speaks Her Truth. So I'm going to go ahead and get into it. Let's go through the Oxford definition of code switching. So, code switching is the practice of alternating between 2 or more languages or variants of language and conversation. That's all it says. So I'm gonna go into what I think code switching is. Okay, so
that was very insightful.
Right? Like not at all, right? Like I don't know too many people, at least, in the States, that go back and forth between languages. Anyway, I'm gonna get into it, okay? So what I think code switching is. I think it's so much more than that. I think when we talk about code switching, we are talking about like how you dress, your posture, your attitude, and plenty more. I think it's a definition that Oxford gave really minimizes what code switching is. I think it's like a Muslim woman maybe not wearing her hijab because she wants to fit in, or I have an example, right? So I listened to this video, and so I think it's this little Black girl. It's her first time going to this new school. She's from the inner city. She grew up around mostly Black people, and it's her first day at school, right? And she says she puts on this hot pink outfit, and she puts on her fresh Air Force Ones, and they have like a hot pink check mark, right? And it's her first day at private school. She got a scholarship because she's super smart, right? So she walks in, and she's like, oh crap, like all these kids are in polos and pastels, right? And here she is in her hot pink outfit. I'm sure she looks cute. She wants to look fire. It's her first day of school, right? But to her surprise, that's not what the environment was that she was going into. And so over time, she was starting to ask her mom, like, oh, can you buy me, like this little polo shirt, or some toned down variants of what she liked initially, right? And in her video, she kind of goes back and forth because she was going to school in this private school amongst mostly white kids, right? But when she went home and on the weekends, she was around the people she grew up with. So she really felt herself code switching, but she couldn't figure out which one was her. Like she had been in this private school for so long, and she spent 5 days a week there, and she had some extracurricular activities there. She noticed the way she was talking was starting to change and all this stuff, right? So that's who she was like evolving into. So she felt like when she was going back home and hanging out with the people who she had like grown up with until the 5th grade, when she started to go to the private school, she felt like that's when she was code switching. She was code switching back to being, like using a few more Ebonics here and living in her original life, which I thought was a really good example of what I think code switching is, right? It's not just the way you talk or you going back and forth between using standard English and Ebonics. I think it's like, girl, it's your hand gestures. Like y'all can't see me, but I'm doing a period right now. Like, like you're not doing that at work. But anyway, I'm sure this little girl
not in their face.
At
You're
school.
Probably doing it at work, but probably not in their face.
Yeah, I'm
with the camera off,
ending my camera and then doing the period after I say something profound. But anyway, so that's one example I think that like really speaks to code switching. And I have another example. In 2012, there was a video of President Barack Obama, and he enters a locker room of the U.S. men's Olympic team. I don't know if y'all seen it. The video went viral. And in the clip, like we can see that there's a clear difference. Like there's this big distinction between how he greets Kevin Durant and how he greets like the white coach. I don't know his name. Anyway, when he goes up to the white coach, he extends his hand. It's like a very formal handshake. And then he like greets KD and he's like, he daps him up, it's that whole half hug over the shoulder tap. If you know what I'm talking about. If you know, you know. If you don't, go watch the video. But it's just two big examples, I think, of code switching and what code switching is, and kind of just to go back to that original definition and how I don't think that it represents code switching. So I guess now the question is, why do we code switch now that we've established what I think code switching is, and for the sake of the podcast, right? So why do we code switch, and is it harmful? My answer to why do we code switch is it depends. And is it harmful? It also depends. I think we code switch for a multitude of reasons, mostly from my lived experiences and a few of the articles that I read. I think we do it because we want to fit in or be seen as intelligent. But I also think we do it to like open doors that otherwise would have been closed or maybe not have been open because of people's biases and their inclinations to discriminate against people that don't sound, look, or dress white. I think it's people's fear of wanting to be far away from perceived whiteness, because at least in the States and in the context of what we're talking about, right? White is right. And that probably extends far from the States. But anyway, so another thing that I found when I was like going through all of this is I found this interesting study from WashU St. Louis. They did research, and the findings are titled Linguistic Profiling. The sound of your voice may determine if you get that apartment or not. So y'all can already like guess what that's about, right? So without even reading the article, you can understand why someone would want to sound white when talking to someone that could determine them receiving an opportunity or not. The publication is then test calling apartments and people talking in like their uncode switched voices, and the rate of them getting the apartments versus white people calling and also other POCs calling, but with their code switch voices, and the difference in the amount of people that were able to obtain an apartment versus people saying like, the leasing agent saying like, oh, we don't have any openings, or just a plethora of reasons of why they couldn't get an apartment, right? Calling the same apartment complex, but the results were drastically different according to how that person sounded over the phone. It's a really good article. I would look it up. So just reading that, it kind of reminded me of when I was a little girl and I would hear my mom on the phone and she'd answer the phone for her friends and she's talking normal, like, hey girl, what's up, blah, 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 my mama doesn't talk in like super strong Ebonics, but she's like from Mississippi, she's got a twang. But when I would hear her talk to, I don't know, literally anyone that wasn't like in our circle of friends, as Comcast, for example, like she got very clear, like, hello, this is such and such. Yes. Like her answers went from, yeah, girl, to yes, no, So I never really, I guess like as a kid, you don't realize why they're doing that. I'm looking at my mama like, why are you talking like that? Like, dude, who are you? Like, chill out. Like it felt real unorganic, to my 10-year-old brain. But, looking back on it, realizing that she had to kind of like settle that because she never wanted to be denied an opportunity to someone that didn't know her. And so I think at the core of why we code switch, we're code switching because we want to have all the opportunities that we can, and we never want to be discriminated against for our lack of whiteness.
Do you mind if I interrupt here, Atlantis?
Course,
because I know there are going to be some people who are listening to this that have the argument, don't associate proper English to being white, right?
Yeah.
What do you say to those people who have that, who would challenge us by saying speaking proper English is not being white?
I agree. I don't think speaking proper English is speaking white. I think you can speak very proper English and sound like a Black person. I think that, you know, I'm talking like how I am now, but then if I want to like lose a little bit of it, I can very much so go sound like a Valley girl if I want. I'm not going to do it, but I could if I wanted to. I think there's a difference between enunciating and speaking clearly and trying to sound white. I don't think those are one and the same. So I guess that's what I would say. But I've got another question I want to pose to the group. It was that second question I said a little earlier, is it harmful? I got my own opinions, but I'm gonna pass it to you, Speaks Her Truth, to introduce who we have here today. I really want to get into, is it harmful if we code switch, and what are y'all's opinions on it?
Okay. So we have not one, but two amazing women here with us. So we have Around the World here with us, our famous friend who just be all over the place. She literally just got back from a dope vacation. I literally envy this woman. She is my shero. She's so awesome. And then we have my mama sister in crime, Black Velvet, here with us also. And yeah, so let me pass it off to Black Velvet first. Black Velvet, go ahead and tell the people a little bit about yourself.
Hey y'all, so I'm Black Velvet. I've been working in corporate in a salaried space, maybe about, or like in a salary worth mentioning or not mentioning to people, in the past maybe 4 or 5 years when my son was born. And I'm a divorced single mother of 2 kids who's also in school full time and trying to get into law school, do my little thug thizzle or whatever. But that's literally my life in a nutshell: work, kids, and school. So
you should just stay fly as hell at all times. And I just love me some Black Velvet. All right, so we're gonna go ahead to Around the World. Go ahead and tell the listeners a little bit about yourself.
Hey y'all, I am Around the World. I, as my name states, do a lot of traveling in my free time, my not so free time, and my on the clock time. You can probably find me somewhere, for real. But for work, I'm in IT. I'm an early career professional, been in IT for I guess like 3-ish years, 3.5 years or so. And yeah, that's really me. I guess apparently, you know, I'm single. I got a man. He probably gonna listen to this and be like, girl, what are you talking about? But but no, I do have a man who is great. It's just such a wonderful person. Literally warms my heart all the time, every day. But yeah, that's basically me. Work, travel, and doing a bunch of nonprofit stuff that keeps me busy, and owning my own business, I guess. So I literally do a lot of everything.
Yeah, just go ahead and say you the boss.
Period. You know, I try to do a little something here and there, you know, not too much, just a little something.
You know, your name should have been Envy Me, because girl, you be living a life.
Look, I be trying to bring everybody up with me. You know, I like to tell people, and this is such an off-topic thing, but I always like to tell people I'm never trying to be at the top by myself. I'm really trying to bring people with me, because I can't be eating caviar and all this stuff, and my homies, my friends are eating ramen noodles. Like that don't sit right with my spirit. So I always try to do what I can to, you know, bring the people up with me. So
yes, love it. All right. Okay, so Atlantis, go ahead and restate your question. And we'll go ahead and get into the conversation.
Okay. So restating that initial question is, do you ladies think that code switching is harmful? And Around the World, go ahead.
So me personally, I actually don't think code switching is harmful. I think there's a time and a place for everything, and how you present yourself to different people in different audiences is just, I don't think it's harmful so much as I think it's a part of life. And maybe that's a little bit being, just content with how things are and not pushing the bubble or pushing the envelope there. But personally, I really don't think it's harmful. I think it's all about, no matter who you are, like, you code switch around your mom. I'm not about to be out here telling my mom, like, yeah, I was doing X, Y, and Z last night. Like, I'm gonna tell, yeah, mom, I had so much fun. So do I think that's a problem? No, because I don't think my mom even wants to hear about what I was doing last night and what I was doing on my vacation. Like, she really doesn't want to hear that, right? But she does want to hear that I had a good time. She does want to hear that, that I celebrated my birthday, everything was good. So I think we code switch in a number of different ways, and I don't think it's a negative thing so much as you really can use it to enhance people's ideas of you and, like, just help you be successful in a number of different ways. So I think, as opposed to thinking of it as a negative thing that you have to do, you can, and I think this is how I think about it, is like, this is a way for me to really shape who I am for different people. I don't need everybody and their mama to know that I be partying, right? Like, that's not, I don't need my manager to know that. I don't need my director to know that. Do I want them to know I travel and that, I can talk to them about Europe and Rome and, all these different places that their daughters went to and stuff like that? I want them to know that, but I don't want them to know everything. And I think that's okay, because as a multifaceted human being, not everything in your life deserves everybody to know, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. It does.
Yeah, I respect that.
I do.
Black Velvet, do you have a different opinion?
It's along the same lines, but I feel like, at what point is that your brand and not how you speak, like your intonation, your tone, your tenor? Because sometimes you'll see that someone comes in and they don't change how they speak. They don't carry themselves a certain way. They're just authentically themselves, and they still progress no matter what. Like, my mom, for instance, I'm not originally from here. I was born in Canada, but my parents are West Indian from Trinidad. So I think my dad heard me talking to my ex-husband, and he was like, if I didn't know that was you in their Black Velvet, I would not have known it was you. And I was like, to me, I was speaking like regular, but to him, I sounded like someone straight from the hood. Like, so I think it's about the tone and tenor and the intonation that you use when you speak. My ex-husband used to call me his white girl when he used to introduce me to people, because on the phone, that's how I sound. But when I first came to this country, I had an accent. And, like, for instance, it's something that I could tune on and tune off, like how I just did that right there. It's something that I could tune on, tune off. It's something that I do consciously. I don't speak to my kids like that because I want them to know their culture. But when I first came here and I sounded like that, I got made fun of. And I was around nothing but white people. So I just adapted, because I was going to private school. That's what I adapted to. So that's what I talk like. That's how I speak when I'm at work. And it's not because I don't want to. I love being me. I like speaking how I speak when I talk to my kids. I would like to be that 24/7. It's just something innate in me that just switches. So at what point, like, that's like what Around the World was mentioning, is conversation. That's not conversation that you're going to have. The conversation is different, but how I speak and how I say it, that shouldn't differ. So I think that's where the lines get a little bit blurred, and it's a lot of gray. So at what point is it how I'm speaking, and when does it become how I brand myself, or is how I speak how I brand myself?
Right. Yeah. It's a great point. Thanks, Black Velvet. So I know when we had our roundtables, you had a really different perspective than the other ladies on the roundtable of what your background was and how it really shaped you going from home to private school. Can you just, you touched on it. I really want you to, like, talk about that a little bit more. Like, what was that like? Like, what was that experience? Did you feel like you were losing yourself at private school? Like, what was that?
And can you talk about it as well in terms of, like, so you're originally a Black Canadian, right? With the West Indies, background, right? And now you're here in America, right? And, like, Black Americans, right? compared to like even like, you know, black people from West Indies is different. Can you talk about like even the code
So
those two relationships?
Mm-hmm.
So it's really multifaceted. It's a lot that goes into it. When I first came here to Florida in general, we were living in Okeechobee. So that's like the closest Target was in West Palm, Okeechobee. Okay. Like they used to have to shut down recess because love bugs took over the playground type of backwoods Okeechobee Lake, Okeechobee. Okay. So I was 6 when we left Trinidad and I cried. I didn't want to go. All my friends, my family, that's for everybody I love and care about to this day are still down there. So we came up when I was 6. We moved to Orlando when I was 8. And when people hear me talk to my family, they find it really funny that I still have an accent when I speak to them, even though I left when I was 6. And which is so funny because we had the conversation with my mom the other day because I spoke to her about code switching because she's on Twitter. She's like, what does that even mean? And she said that what I do is I stole Trinidad's accent because I only lived there for 2 years of my life. But I've been going there since I was 2 months old. And if you ask me where home is, I'll tell you that home is in Trinidad. I don't remember Canada for diddly. So going to school up here, my mom would always tell me I had 3 things against me. I was a woman, I was Black, and I wasn't from here. Because when people find out you're a Black Canadian, they're like, oh, I don't ever meet any of those. Like we don't exist or whatever. It's weird.
It's like
but,
just kidding.
So there's that aspect of it. So when I go home to Trinidad and I speak to, when I just did that to you guys, it sounds like I have an accent, but when I go home to Trinidad, they're like, how long you been living in America? And I'm like, hold on, I sound just like you, but I don't. When I go Barbados, it's not typically the same. When I go Barbados, the static I get is in the airport because they hear me sound like I'm from Trinidad. They see that I'm traveling on a Canadian passport and then I got a green card. So they're like, what is going on? And then here, I really don't encounter too many problems. People, like I was just telling somebody on Instagram that was DMing me, I was like, I am all for the diaspora. I don't understand why people feel like there's some type of segregation. There is, but for me, there isn't. I don't see that because when I go outside, they just see my complexion. They just see that's a little Black girl. We don't know where she's from. We don't know anything about her. So I'm just going to assume she's just like any regular Black person in this country, that she was born and raised here. So when it comes to that, like when I was going to school at the highest of Seven Hills in FAMU, I lost my green card because I was trying to get a tattoo. Long story short, that's what I was trying to do and I couldn't find my license. So I used my green card and I actually lost my green card, and I called and I filed the police report, and with my name, with my government name and the voice over the phone, the police officer never asked me my race. So when I went and I told the lady like, hey, I'm here to pick up the police report. This is just in case they needed it. And I was like, can I get it? I gave her my government. She's like, what's your name? And I was like, it's Black Velvet. She was like, oh, are you Black or white? And mind you, she's looking at me, y'all. Like she's looking at me dead in my face. And she's like, are you Black or white? And I was like, well, I'm Black, but I did do the police report over the phone. So he actually put my race as white on the telephonic police report.
Wow.
So it's just a lot. And then when I do, like I have a cousin that I work with, shout out to her. So when we get to talking how we would normally talk at the house, people always come and ask, do you speak English? Is that English that you're speaking? What language was that? Are you Jamaican? And I'm like, none of those things. So at some point, I feel like I just decided to stick with this voice, even though to me, it's not me, but I do it because that's what I present to the world on a regular basis. And it's so bad. Even my internal monologue, which not a lot of people have, has this voice. So when I talk to myself internally, I don't have an accent. So it's there's a lot of layers to it. And then like there's always a fear, not like it's ever happened, but you never know when somebody finds out your status, if they'll try to call the people on you. Like it's never happened to me before, but there's a risk for it. An example of that is my younger sister. She's an engineer at Chevron, and she actually lives in Mississippi. When they give you an ID, I was like, can they do that? When they give you an ID in Mississippi, in the state of Mississippi, the driver's license has non-US citizen on the top of it. So my sister actually uses her Alabama license to drive in Mississippi, and she leaves her Mississippi license at the house because of that. Because you don't want to get pulled over and then interact, like, so there's levels to the, and just like anybody else, they'll think she's a little Black girl, she sounds just like me, people confuse us. So at what point, so you do it to kind of protect yourself in a way, not necessarily not to let people in, but for me, I do it to protect myself so people don't feel like, oh, immigrants are taking our jobs or whatever. People are surprised that I go to school here. They ask me like the most random of questions, and I do everything except vote and jury duty.
Right. It's like kind of what we were saying earlier. It's like, what's your proximity to whiteness? And you being born not in America is just another layer of people to discriminate against you. So it's another layer on which you have to code switch in order to fit in with whatever that, or not fit in is like a light way of saying it. I feel like it's almost like to be safe in white America.
Yeah, I want to piggyback off of that to your original question, Atlantis. So you asked, let me make sure I say this right, but I believe you asked like, what are the consequences, right, of code switching? And so my perception has always been a little bit different when it comes to code switching. And while and let me say this, I completely think it's for the space that we're in now. Like I get it, and the majority of us as Black Americans, right? Like we are not in positions where we're not in white spaces, right? Like we don't dominate, we don't dominate most spaces where we can be economically secure without some kind of in white proximity is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
So I think I have, and this has been more recent for me, and this probably has a lot to do with the fact that like I just had a kid, and I think a lot differently now about like how I want things to be for him. And I think where I come from is, for me personally, like I think there are people out there like around the world who just like, well, y'all, like I've said this a million times, I think she's phenomenal, and she's like my hero, right? But I also I don't like the mental stability that she has. I don't have. And for me, like it is so draining to code switch. Like I wish I could just be like, yo, it's no big deal. Like I do this on a regular, you know what I'm saying? But like that's not me. Like I am so drained, and I put so much thought into like the references that I make. Like especially, right, like this whole series is dedicated to the corporate experience. And especially while I'm at work, like I remember I was in a situation where I was reading a proposal at work from somebody who was trying to get our business. And as I was reading it, the reference of coming to America, the kind of the first like person who's supposed to be the wife was like, anything you want, right? I don't know if you guys remember that. Like she does the bow and she's like hops on one foot. And as I was reading the proposal, like that's what came to mind. I was like, yo, this basically is just saying whatever we want. Like there's no concrete details or definitions or anything. It was just a bad proposal. And so I had a meeting with the leadership team later that day to talk about the proposals. And I was like, damn, can I drop that reference? Are they going to get it?
Right.
And it's so ridiculous how much time and effort I spent into like, do I drop that reference? Should I drop that reference? Like, I probably spent like a good hour trying to decide if I was going to drop the reference or not. And then I did, right? And, fortunately they got the reference. So I guess it's a little bit more pop culture than I thought. But just like the amount of time that went into making the decision to drop a reference to Coming to America is like what could I have been like? I mean, sure, I was like working while I was thinking about it, but like, damn, I probably would have got that whatever I was working on done a lot quicker if I didn't have that shit in the back of my mind. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I'm just not, for me, and I think a lot of other Black women would agree too. Like I mean, I definitely think there's multiple sides of this that are just like, this shit is exhausting to the point of like fucking with my mental state, for real. I don't know.
I agree. I've been in situations like, as you guys know, I started a new job, and they have no context for me outside of this floating head on a screen because everything's completely remote. And I found myself less engaged. Not engaged isn't the right word, but it's harder for me to start a casual conversation because I feel like my point of reference is so far from everyone that I work with. Like, we aren't in the same city. I'm the only Black person. I'm one of few women. My point of reference is just so far that it's so draining to try to like talk about something that me and the other person on the phone have in common. And so I now I don't bother, but it's to the detriment of my career. Like, I need to start doing that. Like, I was thinking about that the other day. But it's just hard because I'm like jotting down notes now about like when people reference stuff, so I can go look it up, so I can have an idea of what it is that they're like. I didn't watch Friends. I barely watched The Office. So like those references don't sit with me. Like, and the ones I want to use, like, they aren't gonna have any clue what I'm talking about. There's a few, like I could probably do like Handmaid's Tale. They might know. Who knows? Game of Thrones is over. I can't use that one anymore. So like, I really need to like go get in my white culture bag real quick so I can like be a better employee. Like, I'm serious. So in short,
Yo, merch coming soon. My white people bag. We putting that on t-shirts.
No, I think it's interesting that you say that, Atlantis, because for instance, I started a new role last year, also completely remote because of COVID, of course. Mm-hmm. And my new role is in rural Georgia. Like, any person really can tell you rural Georgia, they got the flags, they got the little thin blue line, they got the Trump flags. Like, it's not a place for my kind to be, right? So when they say certain things, even just an aside, when I first moved down here, my manager was like, "Oh, girl, why don't you live closer to the office?" In my head, I said, "Girl, they don't like my kind over there. Like, we don't do that." And what I actually ended up saying to her was just like, "Oh, I really wanted to be closer to the city," which was true. I'm from a big city, and I've had not issues, but I've had like mental things when it's like I'm not close to a city, because then it's just weird for me because I'm born and raised in a big city. But okay, cool. So we had that whole conversation. But to your point, I also am the youngest. But I am the youngest in the people I work with by probably minimum 12 years, right? The youngest, the only Black girl, the only really, like, it's a couple women. My manager's a woman, but then everybody else that we pretty much work with, they're all old white men. What they talking about? They talking about fishing. They talking about drinking beer. They talking about everything that you was talking about, Friends, all that stuff. I will be quick to let them know, I do not know what you're talking about. I don't do that. I don't know nothing about that. They be like, "Oh, have you seen this?" Nope, haven't seen it. "You haven't seen that? You gotta see it." I said, "Yeah, I'm not really into movies. Like, yeah, I'm not really into shows." Because it's true. I literally watched like 3 shows, Law and Order being one of them. And pretty much, unless you're gonna talk to me about Law and Order, it don't matter if you Black or white. I ain't seen this. I ain't seen that. Like, it really doesn't matter, right? So when it comes to finding, kind of having that small talk of finding, what are the similarities? For one, I use travel as a crutch a lot, just because at least in corporate, I would say where I work right now, since it's in rural Georgia, it's like a little bit more, it's a manufacturing site, so they're not as well traveled. A lot of them born and raised in Georgia, like that's it. But at least where I was before in like the corporate, like more corporate setting, travel was easily one. But I think I don't spend a lot of time thinking about what we have in common. I just be going with the flow. You want to talk to me about your kids and fish? I'm be like, damn, what kind of fish you caught? Oh, for real? Was it big? Did you eat it? Like, did you throw it back? Like, what's up? Or you talking about, oh yeah, this weekend I just put some stuff on the grill. I said, oh, I only grilled one time before. How you do that? How did you learn? So it's for me not even a matter of like trying to find a common denominator. I'm just gonna talk to you about whatever you want, and you just gonna laugh, or you gonna be like, this girl is crazy. And I'm be like, yeah, look, I even tell them, I'm like, yeah, I know y'all probably think I'm a little crazy, but it's okay. And they'll be like, oh, kiki. But at the end of the day, I'm not about to spend my extra mental energy trying to find a common denominator. Either we have one or we don't. And if we don't, I'm just gonna talk to you about whatever yours is. Like, you want to talk to me about your kids? Oh, for real? Where they go to school at? Wow, college, that's so exciting. Like, I'm just gonna do it, So I think that plays a part in, I guess, my quote unquote code switching, and the fact that it's a little bit less draining for me because I'm not spending time thinking about if you're gonna catch this reference. If I, for one, like I said, I don't even really watch movies like that. But if I have a reference, I'm just gonna throw it out there. I'm gonna be like, oh, you haven't seen it? Oh, you gotta see it. And that's just gonna be that. If you don't get it, you don't get it, because they're gonna make references all the time that I'm not gonna get. And I'm not about to go and watch 30 episodes of Friends to figure out what freaking reference. I don't care. I don't know if y'all on TikTok, but it's a sound that be like, we do not care. That's me. I do not care at all. So I think I just wanted to bring that up. It's like, I think it works. Obviously, it works for like different personalities and like how you do different things. But I do think that one of the ways that I am successful in my quote unquote code switching is not letting things get to me. If they get it or if they don't get it, I just be like, all right, cool. Like, let's keep it rolling if you don't.
Around the world, in short, what I heard is you don't code switch. That's what I heard. So good for you. I think that takes like a strong mental and a certain level of confidence that I frankly passed me some, to just say, I'm gonna say it. If they get it, they don't, whatever, let's keep moving. But I respect that. I think that's cool.
For me, it's goals. Like, I can't wait to get there in my career, because what's funny is that, so I've been in my career longer than around the world, but like I said, she's my shiro, right? Like, I 1,000% can't wait to get into that space. One thing that I wanted to talk about, and this is kind of because we did touch on this a bit. I think code switching has a lot to do with being, I think there's a privilege that that some Black people have the opportunity to have in order to do this more effectively. And I think that's either growing up either adjacent or in white spaces. And I was just curious to hear from the group if did you guys grow up in like predominantly white spaces, and do you feel like that helped you like later in your careers? Black Velvet?
Personally, for me, I actually never grew up around predominantly white people. Like, I live on what would be considered the suburbia of the hood. Like, we're on the outskirts, but my zip code is still of the ghetto, technically. So, and it's a predominantly Black neighborhood. I do have a couple white neighbors here and there, and that's just here in Orlando. Back home, it's always going to be predominantly Black people. That's all we're surrounded by. And I try to get my son that kind of exposure, because because code switching goes deeper than just corporate. I know that we're in a corporate space setting, but for him, going to private school, he's surrounded with white people all the time. He's the only Black child, 4 first grade classes, and he's the only Black one. So that also puts into perspective for me. So how Around the World has that crutch where she's herself, I don't really find myself doing that, or how Atlantis has to go Google stuff like that. My team at work is predominantly Black. Black. So that's just my one team. The one team that I'm on is predominantly Black. So the one white girl on the team will say something and then she'll be like, I don't get it. Like for our after work events, we actually do trap bingo. The one guy that was on the team, he was a gay white guy, and we had to tell him what was on his board, but he won, and he was surprised that he won because we were playing 50 Cent, Pop Smoke. Like it was like a legit trap bingo. When it comes to trivia that we do to engage each other, it's trivia about Martin, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, stuff like that. So it's the opposite for me on this team specifically because of that, because it's all women now, and it's just one white girl. So we'll make a joke and we'll say something, and then she'll say, ha ha ha, I don't get it.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
Like never outside of like college have I ever experienced like not being a minority.
And it's just this one team that's like that. And for being in Texas, the company is actually pretty progressive because we actually had Juneteenth off. But I think that's because Texas did a thing and it made it optional prior to what's the president name? The new one, Biden. So, but yeah, so that's the difference for right now. And I'm just like around the world. If I say something and y'all don't get it, y'all better Google, because I said what I said and y'all will figure it out if you want to. But I understand how Atlantis and Speak So Truth, how they need to kind of protect themselves in a way, and just because they are literally the minority in a really vast company. So I know when people call my government name in a space, I'm the only one. So right. I understand it. But usually by the time I get comfortable, it is what it is. If y'all gonna let me go, I'll find something else. That's just my energy, because at the end of the day, if something happens to me, they'll replace me. And that's just my energy towards the work. I like what I do. I enjoy the team. But outside of that, once it's done, once I'm done, I'm done. Y'all get my references, y'all don't get my references. I even talk to the clients like that. I'd be like, one client told me something about how I was stressing them out. It's like, no, sir, that's you. You stressing yourself out. That's what you're doing right now. But I sound like a white girl on the phone, so you probably even take like offense to what I said. But you know what so that's kind of like a safety crutch, but at the end of the day, that's just my energy. Once I'm done with work, I'm done, because I can't carry it with me. And you find oftentimes that that's why you're tired. You feel drained because you carry it with you all day. That second guessing that, am I doing this right? 2 chairs in a bucket, fuck it. It's like, that's literally my energy. And I think the older that I get, the more I get that way, regardless of how I come across to people, because I just want to be me. I just want to be authentic and true to myself. And when you hinder that, that's where you get that I feel tired, I feel drained. And that's not fair to us, because we do so much everywhere else in other aspects of life. Why must I do that here at work?
Right. Atlantis, did you want to touch on that original question a bit about growing up in proximity to whiteness and how that's helped you in your career?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I guess growing up, I was mostly around white kids. Like my neighborhood was white, my school was mostly white. And then that started to change. Like I remember it was like Katrina happened, and there was a lot of kids from New Orleans that came to my school, and then and most of them were Black. And then also this is around the same time that the city that I grew up in started to get like gentrified. So a lot of the inner city kids started to move to like the middle class suburbs of the city that I was in. So by like 7th grade, things started to like become a little bit more Black. They got a little bit more saucy. But then by 9th grade, my parents had sent me to like not my zone school. I was going to a predominantly white high school. So for most of my life, most of my schooling, I'm in predominantly white spaces. And I do think that kind of gave me, I don't want to say an advantage. No, I'll say it's an advantage. In white spaces, I think I'm super digestible by white people. I don't think, like, even with me wanting to throw out references, that's just me really wanting to build a bond with people, because I feel like that's the best way, because I'm trying to, climb this corporate ladder. That's like my MO. So I feel like that's a really good way to build trust in relationships at work, and things like that. But I think without even doing that, I think I am digestible for white people. And I think I did have the privilege to be around white people and soak up all of that, whatever, to now use it. I'm not necessarily saying that was a privilege growing up, but I do think that it's a privilege to have that in your arsenal in corporate America. Because I think white people don't want to feel uncomfortable in their spaces, and most spaces are their spaces. And the less uncomfortable they feel with you, I think the more inclined they are to like promote you, or say that you're good. It's just their own biases reflected onto you. So I think, just kind of repeating what I said earlier, I think without, me Googling stuff about friends, I think at my core, I'm still digestible. And also, like, and I do that in white spaces, but I also feel that I do that in more than just white spaces. When I was in college, I was a computer science student, and I was the only girl. And so all of my, like, the people that I went to study with and stuff were guys. So I just remember, like, they were just naturally start studying together after like a Call of Duty session. And I was never at a Call of Duty session because I didn't play Call of Duty. So I would miss out on the study sessions with them because they wouldn't text me like, oh, we just got done playing, come through, about to study. That's not how that went, right? So I had to like go to one of my homeboys' houses. He taught me how to play Call of Duty. So then when the computer science kids were playing Call of Duty, I would go over there with them. I already know how to play, so they think I'm cool now. And then so I could be there when they started studying, because I need to pass. Like, by junior year, stuff to really turn up. Like, I need an A, and I need a group of people to study with. So I don't know if, I'm sure that still goes into that code switching bucket. It wasn't something I would have done normally. I don't think I would have had a desire to like figure out how to play Call of Duty without that situation happening. But it just kind of goes into that same genre of stuff of like, throughout my life, I've manipulated situations or relationships so that I could benefit from them, which I think just is my mom answering the phone and sounding like someone else. So I don't know if that answered your question.
No, it definitely did. And you have me at a pause for a second. I think you summarized that. That's so well for me. You summarized that so well, because I think I extremely relate to that. Also, someone who studied not computer science, I wasn't quite there yet. I was computer information systems. I couldn't quite get with computer science, but I can definitely relate in terms of like being one of the few women in that in this field, right? But no, I think you summed that up extremely well. So we are coming up on time though, ladies. I know it feels like it's only been a few minutes, and I have totally enjoyed having you guys, and hopefully you, the listener, have gotten a few different perspectives, right? One of the things that Atlantis and I like to champion is, and the reason why we brought Around the World and Black Velvet here with us is because we knew that their perspectives were different than ours. And we champion very hard that the Black woman's experience is not a monolith. And so hopefully you guys, you caught that and you relate, right? To one of us here, and you feel like we always say, validated, seen, and heard, man. And let's just go ahead and let's kind of wrap this up real quick. So Atlantis, you want to take us home?
Sure, but before we do that, I want to ask Around the World and Black Velvet, do they have anything to say before we sign out? Any closing remarks?
I would just say one of the closing remarks that I have is I, different than you, Atlantis, grew up in all Black spaces, right? So teachers were Black. Literally up until I went to high school, because my mom was like, oh yeah, you need to learn how to be more around white people, because I was always around Black people. All my sports, all my teachers, all of everything, right? And I was in private school, but Black private school. So I think that at the end of the day, who you are is who you are. And I think that people, no matter if you're a Black woman or whoever you are, don't feel obligated to code switch in a certain kind of way, right? So even Atlanta said this earlier, it's like, oh, well, what I hear is that you don't code switch. I would definitely say I do code switch, but in my kind of way, right? So do what works for you. If it's, watching Friends and then making Friends references, that's what's up. For me, it's travel, because travel is I just happen to fall in love with it, and the white people be going everywhere. So it just kind of helps. And then I golfed, so I was like, did a little bit of, things here and there. But at the end of the day, we all have what makes code switching work for us. And I would say just do it how it works for you, and try to make it as less draining as possible, because at the end of the day, like, you are who you are. They're gonna find somebody else if you don't do your job right. So it's about you, and it's about code switching if you want to, or if you quote unquote have to. I think majority of us have to, but do it in a way that is the least draining for you, and that really works for you and your personality.
Thank you. That was good. Thank you. Black Velvet, do you have anything to say?
No, I think Around the World surmised it like better than I ever could. It's just, we all do it on a certain level. It could be microscopic, it could be gargantuan. Like, we all literally do it to a certain degree. Just don't lose yourself in the process. That's the important thing. You can't lose the true essence of you trying to conform or protect or do what you need to do. Just make sure there's a little flare or flash of yourself, so you don't feel that exhaustion once you leave the workplace. And just thank you, ladies, for putting this together. Y'all amazing. Y'all are my she-girls, all three of y'all.
Thanks, Black Velvet. Okay, well, thank you guys, and thank the listeners for sticking with us so far. I think we've got 2 more episodes, and then that's all for the season. Is that right?
That's right, man.
Okay. So thank you for sticking with us, and we will see you not next Thursday, but the Thursday after that, with episode 5, which is
the mistrust of HR within our community.
And Speaks Her Truth will be leading that one. I can't wait. I'm sure it's going to be amazing. So make sure you tune in. Bye.
See you guys. The dark room is officially in use.